Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Ajit Naidu. Ajit is the Executive Vice President and Acting Head of Client Services and Technology at TIAA. He's also a board member of TIAA Global Business Services and a fintech called MyVest. He was, until April of 2021, the Executive Vice President, Chief Technology and Operations Officer of Nuveen, a wholly owned asset management subsidiary at TIAA, and Head of Global Enterprise Technology for TIAA. He spent roughly 4 years with the company. And prior to his time with the company, he was the Chief Executive Officer of MDC Business Management Services, a Mubadala company. Ajit, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Thank you, Peter. It's a privilege to be on this podcast with you. As you very well know, I'm a big fan and listen to them regularly. So looking forward to our conversation.
No, I'm honored, and I can't wait to share your story with our audience as well. Thank you so much for that, Ajit. Well, Ajit, I mentioned in the introduction that you work for TIAA as well as the subsidiary Nuveen, and I wonder, for those who are less familiar, especially with the relationship between those organizations, maybe you could take a quick moment and provide a bit of an overview.
Sure. TIAA is a 100-year-old company. It is one of the most premier retirement income focused organizations out there. We are, not a public company, and the sole purpose has been it was set up by Andrew Carnegie, and very, very mission oriented. We serve those who serve others, and so TIAA has been at this for a long, long time on helping others have a better retirement lifestyle, I should say, and retirement income. Over the years, over the last few years, TIAA has gone the path of getting more diversified, and they acquired Nuveen, which is an asset management firm. It is a $1.2 trillion asset management firm. Some interesting facts, it's the number one farmland owner in the world. It is the number 3 or 4 real estate company in the world. And TIAA also acquired a bank, TIAA Bank. And so the idea was that where needed, we could provide, a more broader financial services to our participants.
That's a great overview. I appreciate that, Ajit. Take a moment, if you would, also to talk about your role as the head of client services and technology with the company.
Yeah, sure. I've been with TIAA Nuveen now about 3.5 years. I joined actually as head of Nuveen Technology and Operations as their Chief Technology and Operations Officer. And I also had a foot on the TIAA side running some of the enterprise functions like corporate technology and data, et cetera, right? And over the years, sort of they've added responsibility. And as of last 6 months, when our head of client service and technology retired, they asked me to step in as in that role in an acting capacity, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Excellent. Well, talk a bit about, if you would, some of the areas that you and the team are focused on right now. What are some of the strategic priorities that you and the team are driving forward at present?
Yeah, as in most financial services organizations, digital transformation, customer obsession is a big focus areas. The way I look at it is through sort of 3 lenses. What can we do and what are we doing to increase our customer alpha? What are we doing to improve our investment alpha? And then, of course, what are we doing to improve our operational alpha? And what I mean by these is, how are we focusing on changing the culture of the firm to be more technology and data driven, right? As you can tell, being a 100-year-old company and Nuveen being a 120-year-old company, we certainly have a lot of heritage, and with that, a lot of legacy in technology, right? So the old processes, some cases, we still have some processes which are manual and fair amount of technical debt, as you can imagine. So it's all about progress over perfection as we keep moving the needle. We are making some hard decisions on how we should differentiate. So we are building, for differentiation, and we're buying for parity. We're also getting more and more data driven. And as we very well know, data is the new fuel and AI is the new engine. So if you want to keep the engine humming and get the best output from the engine, you better have good fuel. So the focus on data is quite a bit. So using these as our sort of guiding principles, right? So we've defined our strategy around 6 pillars. And the first pillar being customer obsession. So that is all about hyper personalization. The focus on need and value, we can bring to our customers or participants, like we say in the insurance industry. And how do we bring our collective set of services and solutions across TIAA to the clients? And to support that, you really need to have a seamless digital experience. And that takes us to the second pillar, which is all about digital platforms and digital transformation. And in financial services, if you abstract up, you really have three functions: enrolling a client, money in, and money out. Right? This is the sort of the 3 journeys your clients go through in an abstract sense. So how do we make that as seamless as possible? How do they make that as one touch and frictionless, so to say? So that's the focus around this. So to achieve that, you need to have straight-through processing, automation, better digital journeys. But the fundamental thing is data, right? How do we use data effectively to make all that happen? At the end of the day, all is all data movement. So that takes me to the third pillar, which is all around focusing data and AI. So do we have the right platforms? Of course, we need to have, the right security around data, the right encryption. And data has gravity. So the more you leave it in a place, it gets, more and more heavier and difficult to move around. And as we're getting into AI, we need to have better categorization of data. We need to have better, cataloging. Metadata is important. So that all helps in the explainability of our AI models, right? So data and AI is a very important piece of it. Now, all this is only going to happen if we can provide, scalable, repeatable, reliable, resilient, and all this in a cost-efficient way. So that goes to my, sort of fourth pillar, which is all around operational excellence, right? Also, the rate of change in the industry is happening at such a fast pace. It's really hard to do everything yourself. And with the growth of the fintechs, it actually does not make sense to keep trying to do everything yourself. So we are also going to try to leverage our ecosystem much better, whether it's the fintechs, whether it's the partners out there, whether it's the educational institutions who happen to be, most of them happen to be our clients too, actually, is how can we leverage their research capabilities? So the fifth pillar is all about how do we leverage our ecosystem to get faster in concept to market of our ideas and products. Now, the foundation under all this is talent, right? So the sixth and the most probably the most critical pillar, I would say, is all around talent. So how do we attract and retain the best talent? With all the technology changes happening, how do we keep upskilling and reskilling our talent? We've done some very interesting things where we've created a cyber, program, master's degree actually with NYU, which is heavily subsidized both with NYU and us, and it is absolutely free for our employees. So we've got a lot of our employees, like about 50 plus cohort who actually in that degree program. We've done a similar program around data and AI with UNC Charlotte. So we are focusing a lot on providing, upskilling and education opportunities for our talent. How do we create a more of an agile workforce? Agile development is something everybody's thinking about, but it's more about agility of thinking. This has to get more pervasive, not just in technology, but across the business. Focus on diversity and inclusion. And equity across the talent pool is very important to us. So we're spending a lot of effort on that. And lastly, I would say, organizationally, how do we make our shift to more of a product and service focused as opposed to just a project focus? So as you can tell, a lot is going on, but exciting to see that change in the organization. We've got a new CEO. She joined just about 5 months back, and she's bringing a renewed sense of energy and drive and focus to the organization. And she's very technology focused, Tuchanda Brown Duckett, and so that is also bringing a lot of excitement in the tech and ops organization, the client service organization, to have a leader like that.
That's a great overview. Thank you so much for that, Ajit. I want to dig into a couple of the areas that you talked about, beginning with the point that really is a thread pulled through much of what you describe, but an area that you explicitly called out early in your response about the culture of the firm changing to become more data-driven. Culture change is in some cases the most difficult change of all because it means changing behaviors, changing ways of working. And in an organization with as long and storied a history as TIAA, I'm sure that's easier said than done and has taken some hard work in order to pivot the organization in the direction that you've described. Can you talk a bit about some of the ways in which you have fostered that change? I'm hearing you say that, especially when you get that to the people and talent pillar that you described and some of the great educational opportunities you provide others and means of fostering some of that cultural agility that you described as well. Anything else you'd call out in terms of ways in which you've painted a picture for others as to what the future is to be like, and identifying those who are well equipped and curious enough to drive towards that future end?
Yeah, and focus on being data driven. It is a hard problem. I would say more of a cultural, like we said, more of a cultural change which we need to do, right? But there are some systems and infrastructure pieces which have to go along with it to make it happen. I can speak for us. We most probably spend more time acquiring, storing, and moving data around as opposed to using and getting insights out of the data. So that's the first shift we're trying to make. We're saying, let's try to figure out how do we spend more time getting insights and using the data we have, as opposed to just shuttling it around with all the ETL jobs and archiving and copies floating around and everybody getting a different manifestation of the information. So to bring it down to sort of the technology platforms is how do we create unique sets of data? How do we make sure that now we have great technology out there? We went from the usual, the data warehousing world to the operational data stores, and then we ended up with data lakes, and a lot of people created data swamps, and we are working out from the next generation of that and getting better at the data lakes. And there are some great cloud-based technologies today which give you access to data pretty near time, where the classic dichotomy of the read-write dilemma between warehousing and operational data stores has gone away. You can add data and while getting insights and running reports off it and running some insights today simultaneously. So that is giving us new ways of accessing data for our users. Users are getting a lot more savvier. The tools and technologies for reporting and analytics are getting more smarter. So that is giving access to the data and letting users access data in different ways. Plus, technology and analytics is getting democratized. So you don't have to go to your favorite technologist anymore. Users can actually access and get insights and make information decisions off the data themselves. But to do that, what we're trying to do is, first of all, we're creating the best data stores, whether it's data lake based or whatever, so that people can access data in a unique way. We have a metadata layer we're working on. So people know what data is where, and they can put stuff together. We built a data science layer on top of this, so you can run your data science models on it. So it's all about empowering the user to be more effective with data with good veracity, with the right level of governance around it and stewardship around it. And right level of categorization and entitlement-based security systems around it, so people access the right data which they can.
I also really liked your point, Ajit, about ecosystems. That it's important that the organization have a cast its net widely. My terms, not yours, but in order to bring what you've described to life. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your perspectives on that. I know that's an area that you've thought an awful lot about.
If I take an angle of AI, for example, right? So we are looking at AI now. We started a journey using robotic process automation, automating a lot of processes and getting good sort of value in terms of automation, improved controls, and efficiency. Then we started talking about, okay, how do we get into more cognitive automation? And the shift here is between automating what we do to start automating how we think. Now, it gets a little intrusive, right? When you start running these models and trying to change the way and automate the way we normally think, and these are more cognitive functions, whether it's, for example, when a research analyst is looking at a muni bond research document, which is 200 pages, to find the muni factors, and it takes them a couple of hours, and you can run an NLP-based model, which can do semantic evaluation of the textual context and come up with those factors in a few seconds. It actually changes the way a research analyst works, and completely changes and improves the productivity a lot more. But it is uncomfortable, right? When you have a model which can start giving nudges to a portfolio manager on their trading patterns and what decisions they make, and if they could have made a slightly different decision, they would have got another 20, 30 bips in their performance. It is uncomfortable. So this is a shift we are trying to make from robotic process automation to cognitive automation, right? And with this shift comes a lot of burden on defining and explaining, being able to explain the models. So how are we going to, the data, it has to be, first of all, good, clean, and managed well, and governed and entitled. But also you should be able to explain the lineage of the data and the explainability of the AI models we have. So there's a massive shift we're trying to do on how we are approaching the use of AI and how dramatically it is going to start being used more pervasively. And I think we've just scratched the surface.
I also found it really interesting that you're developing these really interesting and progressive partnerships with different university programs. You talked about the one you have with NYU and a different one with UNC Charlotte for cybersecurity and data and analytics and artificial intelligence, respectively. It seems like a logical thing that the Teachers Insurance and Annuity Association, TIAA, with its association from its founding with teaching and teachers, that you would think creatively about developing partnerships to better build the skills of tomorrow for your organization, rather than simply resting on the laurels of the skills one's acquired in the past. To talk a bit about that relationship, you began to introduce each of those, and you talked about the cohort of 50 or so that have been through the NYU program, for instance, the fact that it's free to them. As you've thought about what you have curated and then who to curate it with, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the process there, as I find that really interesting and nuanced.
Yeah, and some of it actually started with need, right? We had a need. There's a tremendous shortage and demand for cyber professionals, and that's not peculiar to us. That's everywhere across industry, and with the increase of, with ransomware and other various cyber issues we have there. The focus on cyber talent is quite a bit, and there is a tremendous amount of shortage there and high demand. So as an outlet, we were thinking about what is the best way to come up with a way to create a program to address that need, not just for TIAA, but in general. So this program in NYU, by the way, is not just for TIAA. It's It's in cohort with some other institutions. We just happen to be one of the largest, have one of the largest cohorts from TIAA. And what is fascinating is we have individuals from various, various functions in technology and operations who've joined this, and some who've been in technology for 25, 30 years, and some who are a couple of years out of college. So you've got a nice mix of people with tremendous amount of experience in institutional knowledge, and some who are fresh out of school who are going through this program. And whether they come back and join the cyber team or everybody else, the fact of the matter is we need to be, like you said, DevOps and secure DevOps. We need to be security first. So it helps us improve our general security hygiene across the board. And these programs are open for other institutions also. And I believe there are other participating institutions who have their employees who've taken part of it. In terms of, data AI is of course another very hot field. We want to encourage, and we've got other programs internally which we run, and we're doing similar programs around clouds technology. We're doing similar programs around data science, and some of them are actually focusing on particular sort of companies. We're partnering with companies that are focusing on particular minorities. So. Whether they are, women in technology, women who can code. We've got Correlation One, who brings data science to women, and et cetera. So we're doing a variety of different programs all around how are we going to get the workforce of the future ready.
That's great. A great overview indeed. I want to return to a topic you mentioned in terms of the way in which you orient the team as well, in terms of buying for parity, but building for differentiation. There's a lot that's suggested by that first of all, that you have a means of determining where parity is good enough and where differentiation is necessary, and therefore what's more strategic or less so, or I should say less so and more strategic respectively. It also means, of course, that having the talent, and I'm hearing you talk a lot about the ways in which that talent is built. In order to build for differentiation, it requires, employees in a broader ecosystem that can help bring that to life in terms of the building itself. But talk a little bit about that process of determining what is differentiating versus those areas where parity is good enough.
Yeah. And listen, on the previous topic about talent, as you very well know, Peter, this is a journey, and we are at the early stages of our journey. There are some firms who have done this very well and are way more mature in this journey than we are, but we've been at it for some time, and I think we're making great progress. Going back to your talking about how do we differentiate, so we look at our capabilities, and I just for simplification, I bucket into three sort of buckets. What is sort of foundational? What is table stakes to be in that particular business? And what is transformational? Right? Arguably, most of the stuff which you would put in foundational and in table stakes. So if you're an asset management business, you need certain things. You need a proper middle office. You need certain order management systems. You need portfolio management systems. You need valuation systems, etc. These are not really differentiators. These are table stakes. You got to have it. How we build systems for impact investing. How do we generate performance alpha from our portfolio management? Those are transformational, and those are our differentiators, right? So when it comes, and foundational systems are, you got to have global pricing systems. You got to have an accounting system for your ABOR and IBOR, for example. These are all table stakes and foundational. So we're not going to build an accounting system in today's world. You tend to go and get a SaaS solution for that. You're not going to build our order management system. You're going either get a SaaS solution for that. When you have functions like in operations, there are companies that have outsourced them. So these are what examples are. You buy for parity. And so we've started bucketing our capabilities into these broad categories and saying, okay, the transformational stuff is where we will build, we will partner with fintechs, we will partner with research organizations and come up with something which we truly believe is our secret sauce and we can differentiate on. Anything which we think is table stakes and foundational, we would want to buy or outsource.
Very interesting. Yeah, I like that. Like that point of differentiation, as you noted. You also talked about the move from a project orientation to a product orientation among the various things that you've articulated in terms of the transformation that you and the team have led. Talk little bit about the rationale behind that, as well as how you brought that to life. How are you articulating what areas are destined and most appropriate to be products versus perhaps those that are not? I really like, and perhaps a part of the answer is the way in which you simplified the way in which the business is done. You enroll a client, then there's money in, and then there's money out. And I have to imagine there's sort of products perhaps related to each of those journeys for customers at a minimum as a starting point, and then perhaps it flows from there. Talk a bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of product is a fairly mature concept when it comes to sort of business or what you're selling to clients, for some time now. Technology firms have used the concept of product slightly differently. When you go to Microsoft, they have products out there, all the various firms. But in enterprise, we've not used it, or at least in TIAA, we didn't use it that effectively over the last few years. So the shift we are trying to make, and this also helps in creating a more commercial mindset. So if you go to a space like infrastructure, for example, and if you say, okay, I've got a team which is managing my collaboration products, and the collaboration products happen to be anywhere from your email, Zoom, Teams, etc. Right? Now, how do we deploy it? What are the service levels around it? How do we do chargebacks? What is the cost structure, etc.? So the person who runs this as a service has a holistic view. So it changes the way of thinking. It's not about, let's do a project to roll out XYZ solution out there, right? So you have to think about the rationale of selecting the solution or product, how and why we would use it, how would we deploy it, what would the SLAs, what would be the run cost in steady state, the recovery and disaster recovery capabilities if needed, and of course the costing and the chargeback. So it's a more 360 view, and you can use that across the board in various ways, and you can align everything you do in this thinking. And once we define the product managers, their role is to think of that 360 and own it that way. So it's not about a bunch of developers developing a project and handing over to some other operations team, and then so this is really taking, on one side we talk about SecDevOps, where the developers are becoming more responsible for operations also. But now we're taking this more holistically and saying, okay, now you're responsible for solution, not just development, but the whole thinking, strategy, pricing, deployment, and SLAs.
Very good. I wanted to ask you, gosh, we've already covered a number of important trends related to data, related to artificial intelligence, related to the various aspects of modernization that you've put in place in order to be able to bring this to life in an organization, as you point out, that's 100+ years old. Are there other trends that particularly excite you as you look to the future, whether greater depth into some that we've already covered, or perhaps some other ones that are beginning to make their way onto your roadmap, Ajit?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think we are looking at the starting, really seeing some early signs of success with use of AI. So that's very exciting. We've got a long way to go. Now I could throw things like quantum computing and all. We are very far from all that. We don't see that happening in the world of TIAA in the coming, at least the next 12 to 18 months, but there's something out there. But when I look at the culmination of data and AI, cloud computing, the growth in concept of edge computing and 5G, you've got a very interesting sort of set of technologies which will radically change how you can engage with our clients in real time, hyper-personalized, in a very cost-effective manner, and give them multi-channel, seamless multi-channel experience. With 5G, you can start using, first of all, your pipes are much bigger, so you can use a lot more data. But your experience on mobile, effective use of video and audio, concept like conversational AI will become more common. And with the compute and bandwidth capabilities now getting to a very affordable manner, that will all become reality. Now we are seeing a massive shift in our calls and our contact center, right? Using some AI technologies, we are seeing some very, very interesting insights coming on how we can automate what our clients are calling our contact centers for. So your IVRs were doing your first generation one automation of automating your calls and categorizing them and getting a customer to do self-help. Now with AI, you can take it to the next level where the machines can help do the next best action, get the contact center rep to be more productive, but also give a lot more semantically astute capabilities to through the machine to the customer to be able to do self-help on things they were maybe got stuck halfway through a transaction. The bot can detect that automatically and guide them through the next best action as needed. So there's some fascinating opportunities there. Edge computing, as it's growing, is going to open up a whole bunch of opportunities. As we said, data, we seem to be moving data closer to the models and the applications, and then we move it back again as we are, data is generated closer to the where it's used and where it's generated. But we seem to move it out to the cloud. With edge computing, you'll see a lot of that being able to be kept closer to where it's generated, used, and ability to manipulate it, and models will come to it. So all those things are fascinating in how we can improve our services for our clients.
Well, Ajit Naidu, thank you so much for sharing a bit about your experience and this remarkable transformation that you are fostering, covering people and talent, process, technology, revolutionizing and rethinking the way in which the organization personalizes its offering for customers, among a variety of other topics that we've covered together. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. I'll leave you with one thought. We all have time and humanity common amongst us, but what differentiates us is how we use our time and how we show our humanity. So I think that's something which will become more and more important for us to think about as the machines and AI gets more prevalent in society.
A great topic and a great idea to leave us with. Thank you again.